Good morning, 5th grade, and welcome to Ready, Set, Read. I'm Miss Turner, and I will be your host today. Today, we are going to be talking about some of the superstars of science. What we're going to do is we're going to read through the text together, and then we're going to answer some questions and talk about some text features as we do our reading. So, before we get started, please make sure that you have a pen or a pencil. You should have your Week 8 distance learning packet and a scratch piece of paper. Please go ahead and meet me on the page where the story starts. All right, I'll see you there. Thanks. Superstars of Science. Sensational Scientist, Spectacular Science. Queen of the Chimps. Chimpanzees are apes, and they are our closest relatives. And nobody knows that better than Jane Goodall. As a young woman, Goodall went to the jungles of Tanzania, a country in Africa, to study chimpanzees. At first, the chimps ran away whenever she was nearby. Eventually, the chimps learned to trust her. Goodall discovered that chimps use tools, such as twigs, to fish for bugs. At the time, scientists thought only humans use tools. Today, chimps are in danger of dying out. She works to save them and their habitat. The least I can do is speak out for those who cannot speak for themselves, Goodall says. Cosmic genius. What's the deal with black holes? Just ask Stephen Hawking. He is a cosmologist, a scientist who attempts to answer questions about how the universe began. Those are big questions, but Hawking has come up with big answers. Hawking is a professor at the University of Cambridge in Great Britain. His calculations help support the theory that the universe began with a huge explosion known as the Big Bang. In that explosion, all of the elements that make up the universe came together to form the galaxies, planets, and stars. Hawking has also made many discoveries about black holes, objects at the centers of galaxies with gravity so strong that nothing can escape from them, not even light. Hawking suffers from a disease that affects his muscles. He is almost fully paralyzed and must use a wheelchair, but his disability has not kept him from becoming one of the world's most famous physicists. He was even featured on The Simpsons. Being a scientist is cool. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Some scientists work in outer space. Others work under the sea, study different animals, or invent things. Read about some interesting scientists. Mr. Invention. Dan Kamen is a guy with ideas. He has invented all kinds of products, from medical machines to scooters. What do his inventions have in common? They improve people's lives. Kamen is best known for inventing the Segway, a kind of electric scooter that's controlled by slight movements of the rider's body. But the Segway isn't his only cool invention. He's also created wheelchairs that climb stairs. Kamen's inventions have made him rich. He is a strong supporter of science education. He started FIRST, a robotics organization for high school students. He wants the next generation of students to be full of great inventors, too. Not so silent. Some scientists make big discoveries in laboratories. Others change the world by writing a book. That's exactly what Rachel Carson did. Born in 1907 near Pittsburgh, Carson studied biology. She later worked as a writer and as a scientist for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. While working at that agency, Carson learned about pesticides, chemicals sprayed on crops to kill insect pests. She became worried about DDT, a pesticide that was killing birds by weakening their eggshells. In those days, few people thought about the effects that some chemicals had upon the environment. That changed in 1962 when Carson published her book, Silent Spring. The book describes how some chemicals were destroying the environment. Thanks to Carson, the public started thinking more about how we should treat the natural world. In fact, the United States government banned the use of DDT in 1972. Listening to bugs. Cockroaches, wasps, bees, spiders, and snakes. Charles Henry Turner studied critters that make most people's skin crawl. By doing so, he answered questions about how these small animals behave. Turner was born in 1867. It was a difficult time for many African Americans, but Turner didn't let race hold him back. He became a successful and respected scientist. While teaching high school in St. Louis, he experimented on plants and animals. Many of his subjects were bugs. He proved that honeybees can see colors and patterns and that insects can hear. Today, few people have heard of Turner, but Charles Abramson, a professor at Oklahoma State University, is trying to change that. He wrote a new book about Turner. His story is inspiring, Abramson writes, and continues to be inspiring more than 80 years after his death. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is talk about these text-dependent questions and using the RACE strategy to answer these questions. Wow, I loved learning about the superstars of science. Who was your favorite scientist that we just learned about? Awesome. That's so great. My favorite scientist that we learned about was Jane Goodall. I think her work is so impressive and so interesting. Okay, so now I'm going to meet you on a slide and I'm going to go through some of how we can use the text features to help us as we answer these questions. I'm going to review the race-based strategy with you so you can answer your questions, and then I'm going to actually give you some time to work on those questions before we close it all out. Okay, so stay right here. I will meet you on the slide. The text we read today included lots of text features. You may be wondering, what are text features and why do we need them? Well, that's what we're going to talk about right now. We need text features to give us important information, help us understand the text, and also make the text more fun. Today, we're specifically going to be talking about 4 text features that are included or were included throughout the text. The first is a heading. A heading tells us what we are going to read about in that section. Bold words. These are important words for the reader to know. A caption. This tells us about a photo or a drawing. And finally, a photograph. This is a picture taken by a camera. We saw each of these text features today throughout the text. Using the anchor charts that we just looked at, we're going to look on this page and see if we can find any examples of text features. Let's see. When we go back to the page, can we find a heading, a section that tells us what we are going to read about? When I look, I notice that at the top it says the Queen of the Chimps. That is an example of a heading. The author includes that so that you know what the next section of text is going to be about. Let's see if we can find some bold words that are important words for the reader to know. When I look in the first line, I see that it says chimpanzees are apes, and they are our closest relatives. And nobody knows that better than Jane Goodall. I see that Jane Goodall is bold. It's a little bit darker, and that lets us know that that is an important word in the text. So we've now found a heading and bold words that help us understand the text. Finally, let's see if we can find a photograph and a caption that tells about the photo or drawing. I'm looking on this page and I notice right at the top, as I'm sure you do, that there is a photograph of Jane with some chimpanzees, and then underneath a highlighted section that says Jane Goodall at a sanctuary for chimpanzees in Kenya. So we've seen examples of these 4 text features: heading, Queen of the Chimps; bold words, Jane Goodall; the caption, Jane Goodall at a sanctuary for chimpanzees in Kenya, underneath a picture taken by a camera. Let's take some time to look at another section of the text and see if we can find some text features that might help us when we answer the questions. Use the text features anchor chart to help you find some of these text features. I'll give you about 1 minute to try and find some text features that might help you answer your questions. All right, while reading through the text, were you able to find the heading, bold words, a caption or a photograph? Let me show you what I found. First, I noticed Cosmic Genius, which is the heading. That lets me know that this section is going to be about a cosmic genius. Then I saw this photograph right here. I did not see a caption, and that's okay. Remember, you won't always have all text features on every section of the text. The final thing I noticed as I was reading were these bold words that let me know these are important words for the reader to know. The words are Stephen Hawking and cosmologist. This lets me know Stephen Hawking is important and the fact that he's a cosmologist is important. Now that we've spent some time talking about the different text features, use those text features to help you use the RACE strategy and answer the text-dependent questions. I'm going to go ahead and give you 3 minutes to finish answering these questions. Remember, use the text features and write your answers in complete sentences using the RACE strategy. Tomorrow, you should read the text again. You can rewatch this video to read along with me. Then you should answer the text-based questions and use those text features and the RACE strategy to answer them in complete sentences. You will also fill out this chart where you go through and look at the different scientist superstars that were listed in the text and write what did they discover and what was the process of discovery. Looking at the different sections that are marked by the headings will help you with this. All right, you guys did a great job today. 5th grade, I had such a great time working with you today on answering those questions. Remember, as you go through and answer the questions, always look back at the text. Always try to utilize that RACE writing strategy so that you can get good, complete answers that fully address the text-based question. Before we close out today, of course, I'm going to share with you another one of my favorite books that you might want to check out during this time. This one is actually a sequel, meaning it's the second book in a series. It's called The One and Only Bob. So the first one was called The One and Only Ivan, and I loved it so much. It's very sweet, a very tender story about animals and their connections to people and their right to be treated appropriately. It looks like a big chunky book, but a lot of the pages look like this and don't have as many words, so it's not as overwhelming as it seems. Let me go ahead and read the blurb. It says, brave hearts come in small packages. Bob is an independent dog. He knows he could still make it on his own if he had to, even though he now has a home with his human friend Julia, regular meals, belly rubs, and a bed to call his own. But most important of all, he still gets to visit his best friends at their new home. Ivan, a silverback gorilla, and Ruby, a young elephant, live nearby in a sanctuary. At home for Bob, a home for his friends, and all the treats he could want. But something's missing. Someone is missing. Someone who Bob thought was gone forever, until the days he realizes he's not. A lot can go wrong in the moment left to chance, but the blink of an eye, the bounce of a bone. When a hurricane hits, Bob sets out on a dangerous journey in search of his long-lost sister, with the aid of Ivan and Ruby. In this stunning sequel to the modern classic, The One and Only Ivan, Katherine Applegate continues the story of Bob, Ivan, and Ruby as Bob finds courage he never knew he had and discovers the true meaning of friendship, family, and home. I hope you give The One and Only Ivan and then The One and Only Bob a chance during this time. All right, as always, I want you to know that your teachers love you and they miss you and they really wish they could be with you finishing out the school year. I'll see you next time. Bye.